And so now we're going to start, and Nancy Griffin is going to introduce the first of several that we're going to talk about, Carl Stefan. And she's coming right now.
Well, gee, what am I going to say about Carl? I started, you all have the information about Carl, and I could sit and read all that to you, but I'll let you all read that. I'll just tell you my thoughts of Carl. Back in 1990, they started a thing called the BFA long jump. And Carl and, woohoo, my husband, Dan Griffin, were the judges on it. And so I came along and I said I would help them. And so I was helping Carl, and that was fun. And then he needed an assistant. And at that time, he had become, as we went down the path, he became the president of the CIA. And now I am the executive secretary to the president of the CIA. And that's my time with Carl. I don't have all these stories that everyone else has, but I have an absolute wonderful friendship. And so, Carl, would you come up here, please? Wait, I help him. So how did you put that? How did you put that? Inducted?
I'm sorry.
No. I have to get all those words right. I'm just not real comfortable with all this. I hereby induct Carl Stefan into the U.S. Ballooning Hall of Fame. Let's go over here. Come here. So they can all take pictures of you. So, I'm getting ahead of myself. So, Carl, Becky, is this where he gets the words? Not up on the
Well, all right.
There you go. All right. Words. Carl's words.
Yes, you want to say your words right now, and then we'll have some of your kids come up
Sure.
and talk to you.
That's right. Well, thank you first for that nice plaque, and recognizing that over the years I did try a lot, but I think first thing I want to mention is that it is a great honor to be up here on the platform with Jim Winkler, who I think is the outstanding technological expert of the whole ballooning community. So, and I think it would be wise if I mentioned that I am also honored to be here with my wife, Lucy. Lucy was very fascinated and active in ballooning long before I became involved. So, thank you, Lucy. Okay. My first career was in the Navy aviation. And I was a fighter pilot. And I thought that was the fast lane. and then later began getting connected with ballooning. And at first I thought, well, that's the slow lane. But anyway, after I really got into ballooning, I became entirely excited and fascinated, and it was challenging just as much as any other occupation I've ever tried. Now, the airplane world and the ballooning world are, let's say, worlds apart. They're two different animals, except in one respect, one facet which is common of overwhelming importance to each, and that's safety. So for all of you, stay alert, use your checklist, and keep informed. All right, so that's my advice for all of you. Now, let's see, let me look at my list here. Bill, I think you might like to learn a little bit, or if you don't already know, about the FAI and the CIA. The FAI, founded around 1905, is the World Sport Organization, which oversees the development of air sports in the different categories pertaining to flight in the air. Ballooning, of course, was the first to come, and the CIA was formed in around 1906 under the auspices of the FAI. Now, what is the CIA? It's the Commission International Aerostation. Or I should say the FAI is the Federation International Air Sports. Well, what is it, guys? Federation Aeronautic International. So the CIA is a subcommittee of the FAI, and there is members of the CIA exist in every country interested in ballooning to the extent of having an air sport. And in this country, it's the Balloon Federation of America. And just to confuse things, there's also a National Aeronautics Association under the FAI, which oversees in this country all air sports, such as airplanes, model airplanes, and so forth, under the FAI. So there's two sort of chains of command from us to the BFA, to the CIA, to FAI, and another chain to the National Aeronautics Association and the FAI. Although it is confusing at times, it's a system that has worked out very well. Now, the CIA then appoints delegates, the BFA appoints delegates to the CIA, and the delegates meet once a year somewhere in the world to solve the problems facing the air sport, to establish rules for events, rules for ethics, and so forth. And from each country, two delegates are appointed, a delegate and an alternate delegate. Then at the CIA meeting, when I first started, it was about, 12 or 15 countries. It's now around 30 countries. The delegates elect a president amongst them. The president, who has been one of the delegates, now drops his title of delegate. The alternate delegate steps in, and the president has no connection or loyalty, let's say, to his country. He represents all the countries and he must treat them equally. Okay. Well, that pretty well describes that chain of command, which can be very confusing. The acronym CIA, that got mixed up with some other upstart organization here in the United States. And a few years ago, while I was still in there, the FAI decided to anglicize the names of the air sports. The Commission International Aerostation, CIA, they renamed to International Balloon Committee. Well, to me, the French title was much more appropriate. After all our ballooning sports did start in France, as with respect to ballooning. The ballooning started in France. So it seems to me a French name for the ballooning organizations is very appropriate. Well, however, we became the International Ballooning Committee. But I hung on to the term CIA. It was nostalgic. It was justified, I felt. And so as president of the CIA, I said, we will keep the word CIA as our acronym. And it stuck. Everybody agreed. Okay. Now, let's see. I'd like to mention my sort of introduction to ballooning through Lucy. She became, in the 1950s, I had duty in Philadelphia, Navy duty, and Lucy hooked up with a club there, the American Balloon Club of America, I think it was, and flew with them in surplus Navy gas balloons. And she had a great time with them flying, and I would sometimes chase. And on one occasion, I was chasing, and it was a very nice day for flying. The balloon was doing well. They were enjoying themselves in the basket. We had good communications. But all of a sudden, the balloon was enveloped in smoke. The basket, the balloon, the whole thing, black smoke. And oh my God, that's the end. You got a spark somehow, and that stove gas in the balloon has burned. But it didn't. It didn't go down. The smoke cleared away, and they kept on flying. And what had happened, they had filled out of a dirty old gas main in Philadelphia, and it had sucked up a whole bunch of soot out of that old gas main. When the balloon became flabby, it fell out of the appendix and smothered everything in this cloud of soot. And they came, when I saw them after the flight, they looked like the black gang off of an cold freighter. So I called that Lucy Smoke Balloon, and that's how sort of the beginning of my interest in ballooning. Now, without going into prolonging this in a lot of details, I got a couple of stories I'd like to tell. I got a contract from General Mills once when they found out I had a balloon to fly into cumulus clouds and measure the electric field. The research division wanted some data on electric field in cumulus clouds. So I thought that would be fun and interesting. And so I picked a day with a lot of nice, fluffy little cumulus clouds. And my plan, I'd go up above them, and when I crossed over a cloud, and got over it, dropped down into it. Very simple. Okay, so I dropped down, but I didn't go into it. I went off to the side. Tried it again, off to the side. A third time, off to the side. And then the light came on. A cumulus cloud is formed by an updraft. And so I went beneath the clouds. When I got under, I went up, and it sucked me right in. So I just sat there for a half hour and took data. And I did that 2 or 3 times. And then I went on vacation, and Terry Wright volunteered to take over the flights for me. Well, he went out on a day with some nice little fluffy cumulus clouds, and got in it using this technique just fine. He sat there for a while. Everything was good, and it began to get a little dark around him. And then it got darker. And then it started to rain. And then the rain poured down the sides of the balloon. He got a flame out. Couldn't get a restart. Flame out descent. Landed in a tree. There were some injuries from which he recovered very nicely. But the balloon was destroyed and in that tree. And that ended that contract. But the lesson out of that is never trust a cumulus cloud. So another little black cloud story. Bill Bussey in, I think it was Alabama or thereabouts, had asked me to be balloonmeister for an event he was putting on. And so Bill had this wonderful idea. I thought it was real good at the time. He passed out a little handheld radio receiver that was tuned in to the local broadcast station. And so during the event, if I wanted to send any messages out to the pilots, all I had to do was call a broadcast station, and it was arranged that they would transmit the message over the broadcast to the pilots. Well, so great. That took a lot of concern out of my mind. And so there were cumulus clouds around. Well, so I sent them out for a fly into the field. And by golly, the clouds didn't top out. They kept on going up. And so I had to I made a decision real quick. No, we're going to cancel this. And I called the radio station and said, broadcast to the pilots, the event is canceled. The event is canceled on account of weather. And the radio station said, yes, okay, but we can't say it until after the song is over. And I said, this is an emergency. Get it out. No, wait till the song's over. And so the cloud did develop. Some of the guys flew, some didn't. One of the people that flew was Bill Bussey. And I was at the field, and he made it into the field, and he went, I think he's going at least 40 miles an hour past me. Bill Bussey, are you around? Take a bow, Bill. All right. Well, folks, that's about all I have to say. It's been a real nice life to be involved in ballooning. I had a great time in the CIA FAI. I had a great time at the Balloon Works. I had a great time trying to build dirigibles and finding out that I didn't have enough capital. But in any case, it's a nice sport, a good family sport. And My family is here today to show that it's a good family sport.
Not you yet. You don't, okay, you can say. Yes.
No, I just want to say one thing. When he saw the smoke coming out of my balloon, his first thought was, who will I marry now?
I'm Stephanie Alley. I'm the second oldest child, and our sister Candy is the oldest. She's in California and couldn't be here, but her son Michael is here. And then their son Carl couldn't be here, but his son Carl Lawrence is here. And Wesley is here from Seattle, and our sister Heather couldn't be here from Florida. While Dad was talking, I jotted down a couple of things. And one is every Saturday morning, he was in the Navy, and so we had room inspection every Saturday morning. And so I decided to write, had CYR, which clean your room, and it was under the DSS symbol called Dad Says So. And so we have a lake place up in Vermilion in northern Minnesota, and Dad taught us how to drive boats and be on the water, which helped me now because I live in Maine and I catch lobsters. So getting up early in the morning was a good thing to learn from ballooning, and he taught us a lot about safety. So thank you.
Well, and I enjoyed growing up ballooning, coming here to Indianola every summer, part of nationals. Remember, it was a world record to have 18 balloons here at Indianola. And some of the thoughts I have are of when we would come in late to school, and Dad would have to write a note that we were late because we went ballooning. I remember one time I worked at Balloon Works in the summers, and it was fun sewing those balloons with a double needle sewing machine and wove baskets and all that. And my brother and sisters and Dad, we'd all go flying, and Fonnie and brother were up in a balloon, and they said all of a sudden it sounded like all the seams were just all of a sudden popping loose. It was like pop, 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 pop. And they were so scared. And it turned out that it started to rain. It was just the raindrops hitting. I remember running through a field in Boulder, Colorado, up to the basket, and I was the first one to the basket when Dad broke the world altitude record. He went up to 32,000 feet. Just lots of memories. Christmas Eve, Balloon Works, it's 10 o'clock at night, and aren't other families sitting around the fireplace? But no, we're out measuring fabric. It's just a wonderful life, and I really appreciate all that my parents have done for me and the spirit of adventure they've instilled on me. My husband and I sailed our boat across the South Pacific. We were gone cruising for 4 years, and now I'm a charter captain up in the San Juan Islands in Seattle. So, thank you.
Well, they're all sailing of some sort, either in the air or on the sea. And then the brother they spoke about is a pilot, so they're all flying high. Okay, we have the belle of the ball here. Nancy is going to say a few kind words about you, and then Lucy's next.
I would like to introduce to you Lucy, Luck, Stefan. Please come up. it'd be very fitting for this time that instead of me giving Lucy her plaque, then maybe it would be nice if her girls gave her mother the plaque.
All right. So you are now inducted into Hot Air Ballooning Hall of Fame.
Oh,
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Okay. Well, that was fitting and proper. Thank you. Oh, you're going to tell stories?
Well, I get one short.
Make it short.
For all of you out there who do not know Lucy, I hope that you will have this time today to ask about the zillion amount of people she knows. There is people from all walks of life. She knows people who have created seats in jets. She knows jet people. It's not just all about ballooning. This lady knows it's about everybody. So I hope that you will all take time to meet her, talk to her.
Okay.
Now you can say was that short enough?
That was pretty short.
Okay, good girl.
Okay. Wow. Well, Jim and Carl have said everything. And there's nothing for me to say about ballooning. This is an honor indeed. And Carl's right. I'd go ballooning, and he was a jet pilot, and ballooning was just too slow for him. And as you know, the balloon is the only aircraft that can be passed up by a butterfly. It is slow, really slow. But it has been such fun to grow up in this era. I don't think there will be another opportunity to grow up with the 7 astronauts that I got to know quite well when I was a member of the American Institute of Astronauts and Aeronautics. And John Glenn worked in the same office as Carl when he was in Washington, so I was in the same wives club as Annie Glenn. And I got to Tracy Barnes stayed at our house, weeks on end, as he was working on his balloon. I got to meet Eddie Allen. I've met Deke Sonderson many times. And Malcolm Forbes was a real special friend. I went ballooning with him. I had lunch on his yacht several times. I went over to China before he went over on his flight. But he became notorious when he went to China, and he put his balloon up for an exhibition, and the Chinese said, "But you can't fly it. You can tether it, but don't let it fly." Well, it broke its tether. And it landed on a military base in China. And so Malcolm was held for a while in a room on the base. They didn't know what to do with him. And then they let him go, and nothing more was really said about it. And then at a dinner that night, Malcolm explained that he didn't do it to be mischievous or unfriendly. He did it just to show the spirit of the balloon. He said the balloon is something that is meant to be set free, and that really shows the human spirit. And that's what he was trying to show. And he hoped that the Chinese understood that. And he became a great friend of the Chinese after that. So that's how he used the balloon. And he loved to motorcycle, too. He and Tracy Barnes were great friends. In fact, Malcolm was here at Indianola when he bought some of our Barnes balloons. And can I tell that story, Dewey? I was associated with the Barnes, the Barnes people, and we had a tent set up, and this person came up to the display tent and looked at the baskets and the balloons, and he said, I'll buy 6 of them. Well, no, I could buy 6. Well, he bought 6 balloons, and this Dewey was right behind this person. Dewey Reinhardt, who was here, said, I'll buy 1. And then he said, and who was that bought 6 balloons? And they said, that was Malcolm Forbes. He said, oh, okay. It was good enough for Malcolm Forbes. It's good enough for me, I guess. Anyhow, Malcolm and Tracy were great friends, so, and liked to go motorcycling, too. And so they'd go on their motorcycles from Statesville and start out across the country. And then if it started to rain, as it got out of North Carolina, Malcolm would call down his 707 and have it land, and they'd put their motorcycles on board the plane and fly until the weather got better. And then they'd motorcycle some more. It was just fun to grow up with balloonists like this. And of course, Jim mentioned flying over the Alps. And I had 3 wonderful flights over the Alps, flying out of Mürren. And I had, as my pilot, Horst Hasselt, who is the president of Balloon Fabrik. And that company makes all the gas balloons in Europe. And Horst was a fabulous pilot. We flew close enough on one occasion to get snow off of the Jungfrau as we leaned over the basket. We landed, I think, twice in Germany and once in Italy. And Fred Dolder arranged those affairs in Mürren. Do you have a picture of the Mürren flight, or the picture of Mürren at all? Anyway, we landed once in Lanzo de Tornesa, and Dolder was so excited because that was the same spot that Spelterini had landed in 1918 or sometime like that. And it was a very historic spot for us to have landed in. And I became good friends with Horst Hasselt. He took me, invited me to his home in Augsburg. And so I visited the gas balloon works there. And I just called him last week to see how he was doing. I haven't talked to him since my last gas balloon flight, which was probably 20 years ago. And he still wanted to sound exactly the same and wanted to know how everything was. I asked him how high we had gone, and he said 15,000 feet probably. Anyway, it's fun to keep in touch with all these wonderful people. We're losing a lot of them now and then. Carl was 93 last week, and
And climbing.
Yeah, he can still go up Horsetooth Mountain, barely. And that's it. So, as I said, I've just had this love affair with ballooning, and I think that's merits getting into the Hall of Fame. Thank you.
Dewey? Do you have a few things that you'd like to add to this? Well, while he's coming up here, I have to tell you one of the stories that Carl told me. You know, they live on a mountain, and every day he likes to go up the mountain. He said it's only 1,500 feet or something, you know, up high. And he said these kids keep running past him, and it just makes him so mad. And so he said, I'm working on my stamina. And he said, I figured by the time I'm 100, I can race them up there. This is Dewey Reinhardt. He's also another ballooning pioneer and a good friend, and he's so cute.
Well, it's been a long time since I've heard that. Congratulations, Jim. I've always been an admirer of you, and I'm Carl, for your knowledge of ballooning and the technology involved. Lucy, I have a different kind of affection for. Let's see, Lucy, it's been probably 35 years since you and I flew together here. Yeah. And we were down trying to hide in the bushes, flying pretty low over some streams and what have you, and a huge butterfly landed on the edge of the balloon, and that started our romance, actually. So, and I've been in love with her ever since. She does, I mean, she's a sweet person, but she does have a couple of interesting flaws. And we were flying up, and Lucy had spent quite a bit of time with us off and on, and we did a lot of fun things together. And she helped us with the Colorado Springs Balloon Classic on occasion, and we took her flying up in Snowmass. And the altitude there, I think, the takeoff altitude is like 8,600 feet, probably higher than a lot of you guys have ever flown. But anyway, density altitude affects balloons and people who consume alcohol. And Lucy is primarily a wine drinker, but Joe Wood, who's in this room, Joe, where are you? He brewed up a concoction called Green Death. And he would never tell us what's in it, because I think it is probably illegal. But we all over imbibed one day, and it was just a total fiasco after we flew. And Lucy, we thought we'd lost her. We were staying in a country club up there, I think. They only let us stay there 1 year. And one of the things that happened to Lucy, I've never seen anyone could sleep as sound as she does. I mean, she just like almost dead. And when she'd been drinking, we really were concerned, because so concerned, as a matter of fact, she had these weird boots on. When she lay in bed flat on her back, and her boots are sticking straight up. Just like Jeannie, I told Jeannie, I think she died with her boots on. So, anyway, Jeannie gets a mirror out of her purse and puts it over her mouth, because we didn't want to shake her. She was still with us, but that was her world record drinking experience while I've known her. And we've had some other really fun times. I did work with Carl when he was president of the CIA, and he was a really good president. I think I'd worked, I was not a delegate, I was the advisor, gas balloon advisor, and I was on the rules subcommittee. And Carl was totally impartial. I mean, I accused him of not even being an American, because he was just right down the middle of the road, which is what that job called for. And the other, I worked under a Frenchman and a German over there, and they were not nearly as accommodating to the other countries as Carl was. So Carl was a great American and a great representative for the ballooning community. This place brings back so many memories, I can't believe it. We had some really interesting flights out of this place. And looking at the pictures, driving around town, we stayed in the dorms at Simpson College. Not air conditioned. Nobody told us. First time we came out here to bring a fan, we almost died on the spot. And it was in the evening. We're doing 2-a-day flights. They had one refueling truck, so we'd finish refueling about 11:30 at night, and take all of our kids to the room, trying to keep them up and what have you. And one thing comes to mind. They used to switch the names on the restrooms all the time, so you never knew who you were going to run into in the restroom. kind of kept you on your toes. Well, I'm honored that Jeannie and I are very proud to be part of the Stefan family. They have a very, very accomplished family, and they've been really, really good for this sport of ballooning. Thank you.
I told you to hear some good ones. All right, is there anyone else from the audience or from the family that has something that they would like to say? Come on up. Mr. Bussey, do you have any retaliation or anything?
Well, I'm not quite sure where to start or where to stand, I guess. This is standard protocol. Yeah, okay. Well, I guess growing up in a ballooning family, didn't really know anything different. That's just what we did. And somehow it seemed that every family vacation, strangely, involved some ballooning event. If I thought about it, I might come up with one or two vacations that did not involve ballooning. Those would definitely be the exception. And as a result of that, every vacation slideshow, and of course there was always a vacation slideshow that we got to enjoy. There was a 15 to 25 slide interlude of the balloon launch, which at this point all seemed kind of interchangeable. But I remember taking trips to Reno and Knoxville for the BFA conventions, flying over the capital of South Dakota in Pierre for the bicentennial. My brother just reminded me of the Buffalo Ridge Rally where they had the Buffalo Chip Flip. All really exciting things growing up. And of course, we don't want to forget the pilgrimage every summer to Indianola. Sometimes when the topic comes up with friends or acquaintances and I said, well, I grew up, my dad flies hot air balloons and we did a lot of ballooning, and they always think, you must have had such an exciting childhood and kind of glamorous. And I had to tell them about the dormitories, coming to Indianola, staying in the dorms with the rip in the screen on the window and the eerie fluorescent light in the restrooms. That was the glamorous side of ballooning. And I guess Dad brought down the companion jumpsuit that was my mother's to the Black Swirl and asked me if I might wear it. And I thought maybe not. If he wants to, I totally support that. And I'm thinking, as we're looking back over the history of the jumpsuit, it probably wasn't really an option, but coming of age in the 70s in hot air ballooning, it was requisite to have the jumpsuit. And the fantastic thing about this is that everyone in my family had matching ones. So that was just genius. We drove over to the old field today, saw the lovely dorms, couldn't believe how small the field is. Somehow when I was smaller, it seemed so much bigger. The other thing I realized this morning after we finished this morning's flight, which was lovely, we're done at 8 o'clock, and it's like, wow, we've got a lot of time to kill until the evening flight, which was the case back in the day coming down for the Nationals. And so I had to figure out a way to kill all that time between flights. The main thing was hanging out at the Raven booth, which was always a ton of fun. But I got into a little side business along the way, which I believe I inherited from my brother. This picture I don't know if I've ever seen. But here I am at the Raven booth selling my wares, which happened to be shrink art balloon necklaces for 50 cents a piece. That was, and I'm thinking back, I'm like, 50 cents 30 years ago? That's pretty high price. Last couple of years I sold them, I think I did have raised the price to 75 cents. That may explain why I have a surplus stock. They didn't sell quite as well at 75 cents. So actually I still have a whole box full of these, and I think for vintage memorabilia, available for $1 a piece later on. These are all Raven balloons, by the way. And of course, the other thing that was a fantastic pastime at the national races was collecting pins. I was looking at all the balloon pins over here. Some of them I recognized from back in the day. So that was always a way to spend some time. And of course, if you had the pins, you either had a jacket or a vest or something to pin them onto to display. Of course I wouldn't get rid of this. So, again, vintage 70s. I couldn't get rid of this hat. This is the best. So I do have very fond memories. I have to say, besides the BFA conventions and the buffalo chip flipping, ballooning did provide some amazing opportunities. We've flying in the Olympics in 1980 at Lake Placid. I went on my first trip abroad to the World Championships in Nantes in France in 1983. My first trip to Japan, Saga for the Worlds there. We did the trip over the Alps. It's been really a fascinating journey.
Jeff Winker, I'm the second oldest of the Winker offspring. And I didn't actually plan on making any remarks when I came here today. We drove down from the Twin Cities. But sitting here, I've been kind of thinking there's maybe a few things that I could offer that just capture a little bit how ballooning penetrated the Winker family lifestyle. Somewhere in grade school, and I'm not even sure why anymore, I decided I wanted to start building model balloons. I mean, not replicas of the hot air ones, but just something you could fill up with air from your dryer and send them up. And I told my dad this, and he showed me how to sit down with a piece of graph paper and draw out an image of the balloon I wanted to build, and then how you would measure that off in such a way that you can make panels, and in this case, using the best available technology, which was tissue paper, cut them out, glue them together, and end up with a balloon. And so we did a few things to our dryer vent so we could inflate balloons, and the tissue paper was really kind of wanting in a lot of respects, just didn't have that structural integrity you would like to see in a modern product. And my second balloon, which was about 8 or 9 feet across, I think, lasted 2 flights until it had an unfortunate encounter with a chain link fence. And that was the end of that. At some later point, my dad, I don't know where he got this, but it was a roll of plastic film that you use for dry cleaners. They just cut off a piece, put it over things, and it doesn't get dusty. Well, this stuff was really very thin, which was good, and it was also green. So what I found out quite by accident after getting one of these put together is I had inadvertently made a solar balloon. And so we took it out and we flew it once or twice, and then the sun came out and it was never seen again. So I made one more like that, even a little bigger, except this time I attached a postcard to it that says, please call so-and-so if you find this thing. And so I deliberately sent it out on a sunny day, and I think it was some weeks later we got a postcard from somewhere in Nebraska. This was launching from Sioux Falls, so it had traveled something over 200 miles. So that was an interesting thing to be involved in as a young man. Now, my older brother, he really gets most of the credit for building balloons in our family because our first family balloon, the Led Zeppelin, was actually a high school science fair project that he was involved in. It was, I think Monsanto had donated some fabric to Raven, or Raven had some fabric that was experimental, and that's what he used for this balloon. It was determined that it probably wasn't suitable for commercial balloons, but we still got the balloon into the bargain. So that was our early history, was having a balloon that was novel, experimental, and as far as I know, the first tie-dyed balloon in the history of ballooning. My next younger brother, Greg, now he actually went on to become a professional balloonist for a while until I think he determined that you have to work at least 60 hours a week and play your cards right, and in a good week you'll make money. I don't know if anyone else has had that experience, but I think that was his. But he went on to make a number of balloons of all sizes. I think he started out when he was in his mid-teens making scale models of balloons that people were actually flying, and they had since he had access to all the information about Raven, it made it possible for him to make ones that were, I think, about 1/10 scale, about yay big, but included all the features of the individual balloons. And he would sell these. These kind of people would contract to have him build them. And he went on to build a number of at least one or two small balloons for the purpose of record setting. I believe one of the Whitaker girls was involved with one of them. And I think he has some balloons now, or at least has done extensive renovation on them. So it's kind of like there's been a very large degree of being involved in this over the years. I guess I just wanted to wrap up with a few memorable flights. And I've got one each in the category of most idyllic flight, in which I was a passenger. Least idyllic flight, in which I was a passenger. Most idyllic flight I have ever crewed for, and the least idyllic flight that I have ever crewed for. I'll do those in somewhat reverse order. The least idyllic flight that I was ever involved with, I think we were flying around Sioux Falls. My dad was piloting, and I think I was getting student training. And I think it was a little windy, 10 miles an hour perhaps when we launched. And we were heading north across the fields west of town. And somewhere off in the distance, you could see these high-tension power lines, and I mean 100,000-volt power lines. And I think we decided not to go over those. Was that it? That's what I remember. So anyway, but the wind was probably moving along at about 15 miles an hour at that point. And so really we had to get down in a farm field that we could get out of. It didn't have a barbed wire fence in the wrong place. And at the same time, trying not to run in some of the lower voltage power lines in the vicinity. And I know it's not standard practice to pull out the top of the balloon when you're still about 15 feet in the air, but that's what we did, because that was about the only way I think we figured we could get down and miss everything that we needed to miss. So that was exciting, to say the least. And although drag racing with a balloon is not likely to become a sport, it does resemble some landings, including this one. Now, let's see. The most idyllic flight of which I was actually a passenger was actually a gas balloon flight. There was someone, and I don't remember who or where they came from, who wanted to launch a passenger gas balloon of a location a few miles out of Sioux Falls one summer. Kurt Staling? Okay, thank you. Well, we got tapped to help set the balloon up and launch it. It was just one of the most wonderful experiences, not only just for its own sake, but in the fact that you're participating in a tradition that has been around for, at that point, probably close to 100 years. And that was just a lovely memory to have. The least idyllic flight in which I was not a crew member, or that I was a crew member but not a passenger, is I've got a small picture here. And it shows what happens when you land a balloon on what I'm guessing is about a 4,000-volt power line. Or 4,000-volt power line out in the country. It's not pretty. And I don't remember who that was either, and I don't quite remember how things got out of control. But if you want to look at it later, it's got a balloon half draped over the power line, and I'm.
Right.
Think so?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, he has a history from Carl's flight there.
Oh yeah, but the balloon, I don't know. I think when you short out the cable to the top of the balloon against the power line through the gondola, it's not good. So that was novel, to say the least. And I guess that brings me up to what would be the most idyllic flight in which I have been a passenger. And that would have been actually, I think, not too far from here at Indianola, back in the early 70s, when we had been coming here for a few years, I think, at that time. And that was, I don't even remember who was piloting. I don't think it was my dad. But we had an ideal day. It was clear. The winds were almost calm. And I still remember drifting slowly across the cornfields, going up small hills and down creek valleys at Tassel Height. And it was just the most wonderful, peaceful, enjoyable experience I think I've ever had. So I want to say thank you for everything. Thank you, Dad, for making this all possible, and God bless you.
Just for my own interest, how many of you of both families got your balloon license, pilot's license at one time or another? Okay. 2? Anybody over here? None? No? Okay. Okay. All right. Oh, you're working on it. Oh, it's another generation. Good. All right. Anybody from the audience would like to say something? I wondered. I thought you were kind of letting it slack. Yeah, that's fine.
I need to get even with Carl here just a second, if you'll bear with me. I was in the late 70s, and Schlitz and Stroh's wanted me to wear those jumpsuits too, and I wouldn't do that, so I wore those big bell-bottom pants that had the balloon on the bottom by your boots. So that was really cool in those days. Carl, I tried so hard to make those radios work, and a good recall system, we thought, which didn't work. I recall balloons flying 40 miles and crashing and everything in that storm that we couldn't get them down in. But there's a little story about an Ardath airship that you might remember. Frank Ryder from Colorado and an oil man from Texas named Bill Coleman bought an airship in Australia. It was a little small one. I don't know the cubic feet, but they shipped that thing over here, packed it up in talcum powder or something, came to Bullard, Texas, and they had an airspace on the sectional charts of the aircraft sectionals, and I thought that was really great, and they were going to fly this blimp. So I went over to see them, and for some reason this thing was really, really porous, and they paid a lot of money for it. And I thought Carl was a brilliant man. And he told me that they were going to seal that porous airship with butter. I said, the man has lost his mind. And they took, he'll tell you the real story. They took, I don't know, 200 pounds of butter and smeared it all inside that airship, and darned if it didn't fly. They had then I thought he was brilliant again.
But Bill, you're absolutely wrong.
I knew I'd be wrong. I'm going to sit down. I'm wrong.
It wasn't butter. It was Vaseline.
You're both pretty slick with that one. All right, is anyone else? Bonnie? No, I'm before her. She's still there. Anybody else here? Okay. I have another little special thing. You guys did this magazine, the honorary cartoonist, Miss Billy Nova. Well, he made a special cartoon for both of these people. This one, I just laughed all the way in it. Anyway, see this? And then I'll read it to you. And it says, these two young ladies are sitting here looking. It says, James Winker, Hall of Fame, 2009. It says he spent 35 years working on development of the modern hot air balloon. I think that means he's one of those that picked the pretty colors. And then this one, oh, he hit the nail on the head with this one.
Oh, look at that.
Okay, I'll read it. And you notice Lucy's flying, and Carl's talking. That's a perfect pair. But Lucy, I'm a naval aviator. I'm a balloon designer, a world record record holder, a former director of the BFA, past president of the IBC, and published author of LTA subjects. So when do I get my turn as the PIC? And from their flight last night, compliments of Mr. Olivier. This is Serenity, and this is Jim and Carl. And so one of the people that takes a lot of pictures around here. It's what's her name? Paul and Lois. It's what? Lodola. I never say it right. Lodola. I don't know where the syllable goes, but anyway, it's them back there. Anyway, and they have a picture for both of you. This is the one with Carl waving and Jim being concentrating, and that's the fight last night.
Very good.
And so, if you want any more copies of that, so, anyone else want anything to say? Because we have one more surprise. Okay. Just wait. Dennis, be ready.
Oh, no. This might be the first lobster balloonist. Oh, how cute. Yeah.
Carl the Crustacean Experimental. And Lucy the Lobster Experimental.
I got these lobsters about 5 days ago off the coast of Maine, and if they're not good, they're going to be in hot water tonight.
They're real. As Carl said, then they're real. And this has been a real good time, and thank you for all coming. We have plenty of food here. Do your congratulations, and then mosey on in for the treats. And thank you for coming. We'll see you next week.